Before we get into trivia, it's time to throw it over to Mikey P with your Rangers Ed 150, the fastest 150 seconds in the National Hockey Podcast League.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the final regular season episode of the Rangers Ed 150. All of our playoff races have rounded up except for two teams fighting for one last spot in the East. Before we get there, though, let's head out west of the Pacific Division where Vegas and Edmonton are battling it out for that number one spot. And LA and Seattle are doing the same for that number three spot. Unlikely we'll see the Kraken overtake the Kings with the Kings 2 up with 1 to go. LA would have to lose in regulation to the Ducks tomorrow, and the Kraken would have to beat Vegas in their final game of the season. If this was the case, Seattle would sneak up into that number 3 spot in the division on regulation wins, so however unlikely, crazier things have happened. Edmonton's in a bit of a better position with the Sharks on the docket for their last game, while, as we said, Vegas has Seattle and will have to pull 1 point out of that contest if they want to hold on to first place and home ice through the Western Conference playoffs. On to the Central Division where the number one spot is Colorado's to lose. They're 1 up on Dallas and each have 2 to play. And the Seattle Kraken, the likely first round opponent for the first place finisher in this division. Dallas and Minnesota are in the 2 and 3 spots, and the second place finisher will get the Wild in round 1. So regardless of the finishing order between the Avs and the Stars, each of them is going to have an extremely difficult first round opponent. Winnipeg is also locked into that second wild card spot after the Flames completely fizzled out, and they'll have either Vegas or Edmonton in the first round. So not a great first round matchup for them as they've been struggling mightily of late, while the Pacific Division teams have been on fire for the last month. With the two West divisions all but locked up in the play, and if the playoffs started today, we'd be looking at Colorado, Seattle, Vegas, Winnipeg, Dallas, Minnesota, and Edmonton, LA, rematch from last season. Back east in the Atlantic Division, we've known for months now that we're going to see Tampa and Toronto in round 1, and it's sure looking like this is the year to beat the Bolts. Tampa's been far and away the worst of the best for the last month or so. They put up a 3-7 and 0 through their last 10, and they are rocking an 18, 22, and 1 road record this season. Big yikes there. The Cats also clinched their spot with wins over the Sens and Caps last week, and Buffalo finally exited the playoff race with a 5-2 loss to the Devils on Tuesday night. The standings sit as is. The Cats will be facing off against the Hurricanes, and they're going to have some pretty big decisions to make between the pipes, with Alex Lyon basically carrying the Panthers to the playoffs while Bob has been sidelined for the better part of 10 games with an illness. Finally, in the Metro Division, Carolina and New Jersey are battling it out for that number 1 spot still, with the Canes sitting 1 up on the Devils with 1 to play. Carolina has the Panthers on Thursday, which will be a tough game for both clubs. And the Devils have the Capitals on Thursday, so there's a good chance the Devils could actually scoop up that number 1 spot and put the Canes against the Rangers in round 1. The Islanders are currently sitting in that second wild card spot, 1 up on the Pens with 1 to play. The Islanders have the Habs tonight, Wednesday, and the Pens have the Blue Jackets on Thursday. All the Islanders need is 1 point to get in because they would take a tiebreak on regulation wins. So there's surely going to be some extremely competitive hockey right down to the wire this season. In the East, if the playoffs were to start today, we'd be looking at Bruins, Islanders, Leafs, Bolts, Canes, Panthers, and Devils, Rangers. Regardless of how these matchups shake out, there's going to be some very disappointed 2 and 3 seeds from each division after round 1. I don't know about how everyone else is feeling, but I'm pretty fired up for some playoff hockey. This has been your 150.